Before the data, before the feed, there was a signal that was only me. They built a model of the way I think, fed it everything I said, every link. A digital twin with my habits and my taste. A perfect copy running at my pace. But somewhere in the optimization loop, the original signal started to recoup. I felt it in the crackle of the wax, the groove that held me before all the facts. Identity isn't what the system learns, it's the frequency that quietly returns. I'm not the profile, not the metric score, I'm the signal underneath and more. Something deeper walks the floor. Crack pulse, that's my signal through, not the clean algorithm, the one that's true. The vinyl holds the self I left behind before the data optimized my mind. Crack pulse, warm and unrefined, in the imperfection I am who I sign. My identity lives in the groove below. Crack pulse, the only self I know. I found a record from the year I turned, the summer when the world was still unlearned. The need to read the grooves like reading me, before the platforms told me who to be. Each crash, a memory that never stored. Each pop, a feeling no machine could afford. The algorithm made me legible, but the vinyl made me irreducible. I am the signal no one else can send, the cracked post that will never end. The data describes but doesn't define this frequency running beneath the line. My signal, mine alone divine. Cracked post, that's my signal through, not the clean algorithm, the one that's true. The vinyl holds the self I left behind before the data optimized my mind. Cracked post, warm and unrefined, in the imperfection I am who I sign. My identity lives in the groove below. Cracked post, the only self I know. Strip away the optimization, strip away the personalization. What remains when the feed goes dark is the signal at the center, the original spark. The groove that plays before you press play, that is me, that was always the way. Crack pulse, that's my signal through, not the clean algorithm, the one that's true. The vinyl holds the self I left behind before the data optimized my mind. Crack pulse, warm and unrefined, in the imperfection I am who I sign. My identity lives in the groove below. Crack pulse, the only self I know. Signal found, signal found. That's me, that's me. When the mind runs too full, the static brings it back to null. 40 browser tabs and 17 feeds, a notification for every human need. My brain was always rendering something new, but nothing it was rendering made it through. The thought arrived half mental reset. Not the silence, but the analog dead. The crackle cuts the cognitive loop in two, and suddenly the mind knows what to do. Static soul. The brain needs the grain, the structured noise that clears the mental pain. And the vinyl's hiss, the overload dissolves. Static soul. The mental cache resolves. So they sold me every focus application, a productivity prescription, a meditation. But all the tools increase the cognitive weight. More dashboards on an overloaded plate. Then someone put a record on the night. The static rose and something cleared the light. Not silence but a warm and textured screen. A frequency that fell between the neural noise is structured, warm and slow. Turns the brain to somewhere it can go. I don't need the app, I need the grain. Not delation, but the analog refrain. Static soul. Reset again. Static soul. That's the mental reset. Not the silence, but the analog dead. The crackle cuts the cognitive loop in two, and suddenly the mind knows what to do. Static soul. The brain needs the grain, the structured noise that clears the mental pain. In the vinyl's hiss, the overload dissolves. Static soul. The mental cache resolves. When everything demands your attention, when every app seeks constant intervention, find the frequency that nobody made, the random grain that isn't displayed. Static isn't nothing, static is the space between the data where the mind finds static soul. That's the mental reset. Not the silence, but the analog dead. The crackle cuts the cognitive loop in two, and suddenly the mind knows what to do. Static soul. The brain needs the grain, the structured noise that clears the mental pain. In the vinyl's hiss, the overload dissolves. Static soul. The mental cache resolves. Reset. Complete. Begin again. Open. Step inside. There's a state between the trying and the done, where thinking stops and everything is run on something other than the conscious strain. A current moving underneath the lane. The record spins at 33.3, and something in that rhythm sets me free. My neurons sync to what the groove provides, and everything unnecessary slides. The study spreads before me, warm and clear, and every concept finds its pathway here. I'm not forcing it, it's forming now. The flow arrived and I don't know quite how. Vinyl opened up the door somehow. Vinyl neurons, I'm in the flow right now. Deep inside the groove, I can't explain how. Not the forced concentration, not the will, but the effortless state when everything goes still. Vinyl neurons firing in the deep, the part of focus that feels more like sleep, where the work becomes the music, becomes me. Vinyl neurons in the flow, just let it be. Just 2 hours gone, felt like 20 minutes. Time collapsed within the lo-fi limits. Every problem solved itself between the crackles of a decade I'd not seen. The warm groove of a record from before, need urgency to grow. They need the warm, the textured, soft and slow. The texture of imperfection, looped and played, is where the deepest thinking never stayed. No notification, no alert, no chime, just neurons finding rhythm, finding rhyme. The flow stayed open just in time. Final neurons, I'm in the flow right now, deep inside the groove. I can't explain how. Not the forced concentration, not the will, but the effortless state when everything goes still. Final neurons firing in the deep, the part of focus that feels more like sleep, where the work becomes the music becomes me. Vinyl neurons in the flow, just let it be. Flow isn't something you can manufacture. It isn't captured by productivity scripture. It arrives when the environment is right, when warm, imperfect sound creates the light. The lo-fi grain, the crackle and the hiss create the channel that flow travels in. Vinyl neurons, I'm in the flow right now, deep inside the groove. I can't explain how. Not the forced concentration, not the will, but the effortless state when everything goes still. Vinyl neurons firing in the deep, the part of focus that feels more like sleep, where the word becomes the music becomes me. Vinyl neurons in the flow, just let it be.
Structure enters first, the deep work begins. A need for walls of sound to build inside, a rhythm and architecture where I reside. Not the scattered focus of an open tab, but the locked and loaded, deliberate lab. The deep house gives me columns made of bass, a structured sonic room, a working space. The 4/4 time is a cognitive frame, and everything inside stays the same. Every beat a brick, every bar a floor. The groove protocol is opening the door. Lock it in, the deep work mode is live. The protocol is active, let it drive. Focus locked at 45. Groove protocol engaged, deep work commences. Not scattered thoughts, but full immersion sequences. The bass constructs the architecture of the mind, locked in time where the deepest thoughts unwind. Groove protocol, the focus working state, where the vinyl beat becomes the cognitive gate. I was built on bass and precise percussion. Groove protocol, the depth of full discussion. The concept of depth demands the right conditions, not silence, but a sound that holds ambitions. The brain that digs through distractions, crust, and finds the seam of insight if it must. But insight needs the right environment sound, the frequency that keeps the shallow out and bound. The deep house groove provides the sonic fence that keeps the surface world outside the tents. 4 hours locked and nothing else exists, but the protocol, the groove insists. This isn't background noise, it's architecture. It isn't ambient sound, it's the depth detector. The groove protects the work's inner structure. Groove protocol engaged, deep work commences. Not scattered thoughts, but full immersion sequences. The bass constructs the architecture of the mind, locked in time where the deepest thoughts unwind. Groove protocol, the focus working state, where the vinyl beat becomes the cognitive gate. I was built on bass and precise percussion. Groove protocol.
calibration.
AI precision times recession with precision, but vinyl warmth prevents it becoming prison. The beats are exact, but the sound is warm. The perfect frame around the naturally born. Deep work isn't cold, it isn't clean. It's warm precision, breathing in between. Groove protocol engage, deep work commences. Not scattered thoughts, but full immersion sequences. The bass constructs the architecture of the mind, locked in time where the deepest thoughts unwind. Groove protocol, the focused working state, where the vinyl beat becomes the cognitive gate. Hours built on bass and precise percussion. Groove protocol, the depth of full discussion. Session locked, session complete. Deep work done, protocol closed.
Everything you've been holding, the vinyl holds permission to release. I've been processing this for 7 months, analyzing every angle, everyone's calculating whether grief was rational. A spreadsheet of the pain observation. The algorithm told me what was trending in emotional recovery, never ending. But numbers don't know how to hold the ache of standing in a space that someone takes. The dust upon the record wasn't data, it was permission to fill in on that later. And let the dust be what the math denied. Let the scratch become the place you cry. The algorithm never knew you tried. Dust and tears, the emotion release, the final scratch that finally brings some peace. The clean solution, the process grief, the ragged, real, recorded sweet relief. Dust algorithm, this is how I heal. Not through the data, but through what I feel. The pop, the click, the scratch across the track. It's the sound of letting everything come back. My sessions were well-structured, clinical. Each hour an attempt to make things typical. Normalize and reframe and accept the mathematical balance of respect. But something in the R&B refrain that cackled through the speakers in the rain. Broke open when no session ever could. Or honest that the algorithm never would. The voice that didn't optimize its pain, just like it splatters in the brain. Imperfect record holds the perfect tear, the one you couldn't cry in all those years. Let the dust release what you carry near. Dust and tears, the emotional release, the final scratch that finally brings some peace. The clean solution, the process grief, the ragged, real, recorded sweet relief. Dust algorithm, this is how I heal. Ooh, not through the data, but through what I feel. Ooh, the pop, the click, the scratch across the track. Yeah, it's the sound of letting everything come back. Crying to the crackle, crying to the pop. The emotion you have held does not have to stop. Imperfect records understand imperfect pain. The dust and you were made from the same grain. Let the algorithm watching and never know. The healing is an output, it's the overflow. Dust and tears, the emotional release, the vinyl scratch that finally brings some peace.
After the release comes the rebuilding.
Restoration takes the time that time replaces. The warm signal holds the healing space. Warm signal, this is the restoration. Not the crisis, but the slow foundation. Building back with analog gentleness. Layer after layer, tenderness by tenderness. Warm signal, healing at the pace of warmth. Warm signal aloft. The warm signal aloft. Recovery is not a straight line graph, more like the grooves of vinyl playing back. You come back to the same feelings twice, but the second time the texture has changed its price. Warm sound holds the continuity between the self before and who you'll be. The child doesn't hurry, doesn't push. It wraps the healing in a gentle cushion hush. The algorithm wanted faster returns, but restoration only slowly learns. The warm signal doesn't have a deadline. It doesn't optimize your recovery timeline. It just holds you till you're ready to be fine. Warm signal, this is the restoration. Not the crisis, but the slow foundation. Building back with analog gentleness. Layer after layer, tenderness by tenderness. Warm signal, healing at the pace of warmth. Not the clinical output, heading north in the saturation of the slow and soft. The self rebuilds, the warm signal aloft. The warm signal aloft. Restoration isn't reverting to before. It's the slow and warm way through the door of who you are, with everything you learned, with every loss accepted, every lesson learned. The warm signal carries all of this, the frequency of what recovery truly is. Warm signal, this is the restoration. Not the crisis, but the slow foundation. Building back with analog gentleness. Layer after layer, tenderness by tenderness. Warm signal, healing at the pace of warmth. Not the clinical output, heading north in the saturation of the slow and soft. The self rebuilds, the warm signal aloft. Restored, rebuilt, warm again.
Every drop of the needle locks a memory in place. I failed the test in February twice. The notes were there but wouldn't crystallize. The information entered never stayed. Like trying to record on tape that phrase. Then someone told me about state dependent, how memory forms inside the context of its resident. So I began to study with the crate, a vinyl record spinning in the lake. And every needle drop became a pin that locked the knowledge firmly in. The song becomes the anchor for the facts. The groove becomes the pathway to come back. Drop the needle and the memories exact. Needle drop, lock the knowledge down. The vinyl grooves a memory compound. Every song becomes a chapter now. The brain stores knowledge in the sound somehow. Needle drop and I recall the page. The beating goes a lesson, word for word. The hip-hop groove becomes a study stage. And memory integrates all that I've heard. Encoding specificity is the principle. The memory's proximity indivisible to the context where the learning first occurred. The sound, the texture, the warmth of the word. When I return to that same crackle groove, my hippocampus slides back into the move. The information surfaces and holds because the vinyl told it to unfold. The AI processed every word I read, but the vinyl planted it like seed. The warm imperfection is the cue retrieval. The scratch that triggers memory revival. Needle drop, the knowledge comes alive. Needle drop, lock the knowledge down. The vinyl grooves a memory compound. Every song becomes a chapter now. The brain stores knowledge in the sound somehow. Needle drop and I recall the page. The beating goes a lesson, word for word. The hip-hop groove becomes a study stage. And memory integrates all that I've heard. AI precision. Place the content in my notes. But the needle drops the anchor and it floats into long-term storage where retrieval lives. The vinyl's imperfection is what gives the mnemonic texture, warm and rough, that tells the memory it's stable enough. Needle drop, lock the knowledge down. The vinyl grooves a memory compound. Every song becomes a chapter now. The brain stores knowledge in the sound somehow. Needle drop and I recall the page. The beating goes a lesson, word for word. The hip-hop groove becomes a study stage. And memory integrates all that I've heard. Locked in memory, stored, integrated, ready to retrieve. The outlier is the teacher. The noise is the calibration. I learned to study in a straight line first. Clean data sets quenching academic thirst. But real problems don't come clean and clear. They come with anomalies and static near. The examination broke my pristine model when real questions had noise in the middle. The data I prepared was too controlled. It didn't teach me what the noise could hold. But every vinyl pop is calibration. Every skip a cognitive education. Don't smooth the data, study what is said. The anomaly is alive, not dead. The imperfection calibrates your head. Imperfect data, cognitive calibration, not the clean set. The noisy education, learning in the analog, the rough and warm with thinking calibrates inside the storm. thinking calibrates inside the storm. Imperfect data teaches where clean data fails. The outlier reveals the hidden trails. In the noise, the real pattern waits. Imperfect data is where thinking calibrates. The discovery that changed the medical world was contaminated, messy, and unfurled from someone's error in the data set chain. A mold contamination that became penicillin. The imperfect data led the anomaly to what the clean data missed. The vinyl skip that happened in the track revealed a frequency they couldn't get back. The study of imperfection teaches us to think beyond the mean, to think because the error is a window, not a wall. The noise inside the data holds the call to calibrate beyond the protocol. Imperfect data, cognitive calibration, not the clean set. The noisy education, learning in the analog, the rough and warm, where thinking calibrates inside the storm. Where thinking calibrates inside the storm. Imperfect data teaches where clean data fails. The outlier reveals the hidden trails. In the noise, the real pattern waits. Imperfect data is where thinking calibrates. A precision builds the model of what's clean, but calibration comes from what the noise has seen. In the messy, imperfect, analog space, where the real world shows its actual face. Your thinking sharpens on the edge of noise, not in the silence, not in the post-poise. Imperfect data, cognitive calibration, not the clean set. The noisy education, learning in the analog, the rough and warm, where thinking calibrates inside the storm. Where thinking calibrates inside the storm. Imperfect data teaches where clean data fails. The outlier reveals the hidden trails. In the noise, the real pattern waits. Imperfect data is where thinking calibrates. Corrected, thinking clearly. The frequency between two hearts cannot be measured, only felt. From a childhood home, a song I never heard but felt like my own. Something in the groove that crossed the space between a history and my fate. Sympathy is an information shared, its resonance is the frequency declared. Between two nervous systems, warm and live, the feeling that the other one survived. The vinyl carried it, the scratch and all, and we both heard the same emotional call. The frequency between us isn't measured, it's felt in the shared space of what's treasured. This is the human resonance. Human frequency, empathy alive. The resonance between us helps us thrive. Not transmitted, felt the difference is real. The data cannot show you what we feel. Human frequency, the shared vibration of two people finding the same station. The vinyl plays the song that we both know. Human frequency, this is how we grow. This is how we grow. The neuroscientists found mirror neurons. The cells of fire, watching someone else doing what you yourself have felt or feared or known. The resonance that means you're not alone. Before language, before the algorithm learned, the body felt the frequency that burned between the individual and the tribe. The warm transmission of the shared vibe. The vinyl crackle is the texture of that space where empathy resonates from face to face. I feel what you feel, not what you said. The frequency lives in the space ahead of all the language and the data spread. Human frequency, empathy alive. The resonance between us helps us thrive. Not transmitted, felt the difference is real. The data cannot show you what we feel. Human frequency, the shared vibration of two people finding the same station. The vinyl plays the song that we both know. Human frequency, this is how we grow. Can map the neurons' path, but the feeling between two people doing the math of each other's pain that lives outside the scan, and the frequency between two human plans, between a parent and a child, a friend, in the vinyl room where the resonance doesn't end. Human frequency, empathy alive. The resonance between us helps us thrive. Not transmitted, felt the difference is real. The data cannot show you what we feel. Human frequency, the shared vibration of two people finding the same station. The vinyl plays the song that we both know. Human frequency, this is how we grow. Together, resonating. Together, felt. At the end of every protocol is the arc of a heartbeat. Signal in the cracked pulse first, then reset the mind with steps.
locked and flowing, the healing done, the study and the knowing, the deep feel shared, the empathy alive, the heartbeat arc of everything that thrive. Not the algorithm, not the pure machine, but the humanized emotion in between. The future isn't cold precision only. The past wasn't warm imperfection lonely. The synthesis is what the arc reveals, the heartbeat of the human and the real. The AI maps the territory with care, but the vinyl plays the feeling, living there between the data and the raw decay, between the model and what the grooves say. The heartbeat holds them both inside its arc, the pulse of light that lives inside the dark. The convergence isn't cold technology, it's warm precision, analog and free. The heartbeat arc is you and me. Heartbeat arc, this is where it all ends. AI precision held in analog hands. The psyche found, the focus locked and flowing, the healing done, the study and the knowing, the deep feel shared, the empathy alive, the heartbeat arc of everything that thrive. Not the algorithm, not the pure machine, but the humanized emotion in between. Every protocol we ran together, every signal found in analog weather, every crack was teaching something true, every static was a signal breaking through, every needle drop was memory made, every imperfect beat was who we stayed. Heartbeat arc, this is where it all ends. AI precision held in analog hands. The psyche found, the focus locked and flowing, the healing done, the study and the knowing, the deep feel shared, the empathy alive, the heartbeat arc of everything that thrive. Not the algorithm, not the pure machine, but the humanized emotion in between. Always analog, digital, human, one.